Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to Ask Anything, a partnership program between Middleway House and the Monroe County Public Library. First off, I'm Sam. I'm one of the teen librarians at the Monroe County Public Library.
Hi, I'm Macklin. I'm another one of the teen librarians at Monroe County Public Library. You'll usually find me at the Ellettsville branch.
And I'm Lindsay, and I work with Middleway House and do a lot of the prevention programs around town for teens and for folks who are at high risk of experiencing domestic violence, sexual violence, or human trafficking. And if you've been in middle schools or high schools around here, you've probably also seen me in your classrooms where I do building healthy relationships workshops.
So the format is going to be very similar to the last one, where we're going to answer a couple questions that have been submitted either through questions that Linz has taken at schools or things we received in our web form.
Okay, perfect. So this question was submitted via one of the local schools, and it says, are there different types of asexuality, and what does it mean to be asexual? So long story short, yeah, there are different kinds of asexuality. Asexuality is a spectrum. It's not just a singular identity. It's kind of like the word queer in that way. So being asexual can mean something different to every single asexual person, but at the core of it, asexual people experience no or very little sexual attraction. That doesn't mean they don't experience romantic attraction. Some people do, some people don't. It's different than choosing to abstain from sex or choosing to be celibate. It's a different identity entirely, but again, it's up to the individual person to define what that means for them.
The next question is, how do I make a safety plan when I'm not in school or anywhere but at home? How do I talk to friends or other people about my safety plan, or have a safety team if it's not that safe to talk at home? This is a really good question, and a lot of safety plans that are available for teens have you thinking about how to be safe at school, how to safely get to school, lots of questions about mobility, like what are safe places you can go to, and some of those questions aren't easy to answer with where we're at right now. So with safety plans, we recommend using an app, which I think Sam will pull up. It's called My Plan. And My Plan is linked at the bottom of this too, but it's an app that you can load on your phone, and it allows you to download, it looks sort of like a fitness app. It has a little like leaf on it, but it lets you set a password, and it lets you safety plan with your individual needs. So maybe you're a teen who has a kid, and your needs are really different than a teen who doesn't have a kid. Or maybe your living situation is split across multiple houses. Or maybe you are thinking about living on your own. All of these considerations will be critical factors, along with a number of other critical factors, in you making a safety plan that's really specific to you. My Plan is also a really great safety plan app if you're trying to help a friend out. In one of your first screens, you get to decide if you're trying to help a friend or if you're trying to help yourself. And like I said, it's totally lockable, so it will have a PIN that only you can get into it. So even if someone can get into your phone with a PIN, we recommend that you choose a different PIN for this app that only you know, so that you can build a safety plan here. The rest of the question asked a little bit about safety planning with a friend or safety planning with someone else, which are things we recommend but are a lot harder during COVID. When you safety plan with a friend who's in a similar stuck situation, you're probably going to do that by phone. And if your situations are dangerous at home, I would make sure to have code phrase for a time where if you're in the middle of a conversation and it's no longer safe to talk about what you're talking about, you have something lined up. I really love phrases like, I can't stop thinking about getting pizza. Like something that's really real for you in the moment of COVID, but can signal to whoever your friend is that like, all right, this part of the conversation's over. We're now talking about how much we miss carry out food. And pre-planning that lets you guys sort of use that as a signal to each other for when it is safe or isn't safe to talk to one another. We generally recommend you avoid sending messages about the hard stuff that you're going through and keeping them on your phone. So if you are texting with a friend, I would make sure it's in an app where you can delete texts. You can't do that with Google Chat, but you can do that with a lot of messengers. You can delete the text that you had if you're worried that someone in your house might be looking at your phone and might be able to unlock your phone. Another resource that we recommend if you want to think about talking to someone who has some experience safety planning and you don't want to have a record of that text conversation, is using the Middle Way House chat line. And Sam, would you pull up what that screen looks like? If you go to the Middle Way House main page, you can get to this chat box, or it's just like one of the top links, or you can go directly there with this resource. And it just pulls up a chat box. It looks like this. It has a quick escape in the top corner. So if you need to get out of this, if you're on your phone and you need to get out of it, you can click it and it'll shoot you to Google. And it will keep no record in your phone. It won't show that you were just at that site. You can't hit a back button and get back to the site that you were in. And if when you're in that box, you identify yourself as a teen, they're gonna link you to me because I do a lot of the teen support. And so if you come to the page through Middle Way House, you'll wanna close this first box, and then right up at the top, it says live chat support. And if you type teen into it, they will try to connect you right away to me or the other staff person who works really closely with teens in our organization. And all the people who answer this box are trained on our crisis line. And also I've put them through some training so that they have a really good sense of what teen resources are available to you. So I want you to have those resources for connecting if you are thinking about safety planning and want some help with it. Safe Place is still operating. So Safe Place is our local youth shelter. If you need a safety plan that involves you being able to get out of the space you're in, Safe Place serves young people from 8 to 17. They can use the shelter. And the way you get in touch and know where the closest safe place is to you is if you type the word safe as a text, the number is 4HELP, like 4HELP, that figures out to be 44357. But if you send the word safe to 44357 or 4HELP, they will connect you to the local closest safe place, the place that's closest for you to be able to go, where a Safe Place staff person could pick you up if you were eligible for shelter, and they'd have that conversation with you. Also, if you just want to text with one of their counselors, instead of typing the word safe to them, you can type the words 2, like the number 2, and chat, and it'll connect you with a trained counselor. Often people use the Middle Way House chat if they're dealing with relationship stuff, if they're dealing with sexual or domestic violence, if they're dealing with questions about sexuality, or if they're trying to seek safety when they've experienced trauma or want to talk about things that have been really traumatic to them. Often people use the Safe Place line when they're seeking shelter as a minor without an adult that's going with them, or if they're interested in having safety from their parents and need to have a place where if they go, police cannot take the young people back into their parents' household. Safe Place sets up a barrier. So if you actually need to get out of your parents' house, police can't just go and get you back for your parents like they could at one of your friends' houses.
Is it okay to be scared?
When we know that right now is kind of a crazy and scary time to be alive with everything that's going on in the world, and it is fine to be scared. Like, that is a perfect thing to happen. We have that happen all the time. I'm sure that all three of us can say that we've been scared a lot over the past couple days and weeks. What matters is how you process that and how you both safety plan and have like structures in place to make sure that you're okay, but also so that you have plans in place so that when you get scared and get anxious or angry or sad, that you don't then take that out on your friends or family around you, and that you have a system of support that you can reach out to, or something that you do when you get scared that helps calm you down. If that's like snuggle your pet, text a friend, go and make a grilled cheese sandwich, whatever that is.
I really liked Sam's list, because sometimes making a safety plan when you're feeling scared is as simple as making a list like that. Like having 5 friends that you could maybe call when you're feeling big feelings that you could actually share your feelings with, and 4 or 5 things that you could do to calm you down. The safety plan doesn't have to be big and elaborate. It can be that simple. So if you're someone who's struggling with fear and anxiety right now, having a really simple safety plan like that is a great plan. I think also being honest about your feelings rather than trying to mask them is important. When we acknowledge like, hey, I'm feeling scared, and we have safe people that we can say that to, it can sometimes make our fear feel a little bit smaller or a little bit more manageable rather than trying to just hold it inside of ourselves and hide it from people. The next question is, I have questions about having sex, but really only have my parents around and can't ask them because it's awkward. What are some resources to get my questions answered? Really good question. There are two resources I love to recommend to teens. The first is scarleteen.com. It has a search box that you can use just like a Google box, but instead of it getting you like maybe inappropriate videos, it will get you actual answers that have been put together, some by other teens and by some trained professionals who work with teens who answer some like awkward, uncomfortable questions. I've always really liked the answers that they've put together. It's a pretty great website, and it's really geared towards teens asking some of these questions. And if you're not sure what your questions are, but you're vaguely like, I think I have questions, I don't even know what to ask, they also have like it organized by different topics, and it's a pretty great site just to look through. The other resource that I recommend if you can't find good answers on Scarleteen, or if you want a really personalized answer, is the RuBot. The RuBot is a resource that is actually has a person who's studied sexual health, sexuality, and sex for a long time, able and available to you to chat for free about it. It's a confidential line. It's outside of your normal messenger, so there won't be a record kept of it. They do recommend that you don't give like your name or address or identifying information in it, but it's a pretty great space for you to ask some questions. It also age limits. So it'll ask you how old you are, and if you're 14 and you plug that in, it'll tell you what specifically laws are for 14-year-olds. So if you're curious about like age of consent laws and like I'm 14 and my person's 15, or I'm 17 and my person's 16, are we okay? Like what's the law? Putting your age in accurately will help you get answers that are really specific to you with this specific bot. It's free. It's totally private. It's a great spot to ask some questions. One other note, a lot of teens, when they feel ready to actually have sex, sometimes it feels really awkward to have those conversations with parents or trusted adults in your life, but also sometimes it's really, really useful and mature to have those conversations. So not necessarily to like ask all of your questions that you feel uncomfortable about, but simply having conversations with adults in your life might show them that you are actually like in a mature spot. And I know for some parents, they want to make sure that you have access to more information, to sexual health resources like doctors who could give you like resources for STI testing, different protection options. If you feel totally not good about using those resources, getting in touch with the clinic, which is operating in limited ways, but getting in touch with the Futures Family Planning Clinic, which is the Monroe County Health Department's health clinic, can connect you with a lot of those same resources and have at least one in-person adult in your world who can answer some questions and can connect you with sexual health resources, with important testing that if you're going to be sexually active, you should really have access to, and with different protections that might be right for the sorts of sex that you want to have. Again, that's Futures Family Planning Clinic. And that is listed, I'm pretty sure, in our COVID guide, which we'll link at the end of this.
Online relationships aren't bad, right?
So right now, online relationships and like just living digitally to hang out with our friends is just a like fact of life that we're all having to deal with. And so just fundamentally, it's important to know that online relationships aren't intrinsically bad. It's just a platform where you have to be more careful and make sure that the people that you're interacting with are who they say they are, and everybody is very clear on what lines and boundaries everyone has and what is allowed by anyone else in your life. And it's also just important to remember that anything that we message or say on those chats could potentially be saved forever. So it's forever. So it's always important to make sure that anything that's being said is something that you're okay with potentially being like saved or seen by someone else, because we can't always guarantee that only, like if I was messaging Macklin, we can't guarantee that like only Macklin is ever going to see that message. But it is important to know that like right now, cultivating strong online relationships can be really important for being able to survive the time that we're in, but also to like establish those connections and really make sure that our friendships stay strong during everything that's going on.
There's a resource at the end that we'll link to that has some tech safety advice, and there's like 5 or 6 critical points that we think about when we're engaging with folks online, especially if we're in forums where we're engaging strangers. And so there's a lot, but yeah, there's 6 points here, and this is linked through the Middleway House page and through the Public Library teen page, and gives you like our 6 core things that we advise teens and tweens to think about when they're thinking about tech-based relationships. Communication with my boyfriend isn't as long or as in-depth as I'd like since we can't physically see each other right now. I miss talking to him. How do I talk to him about the way that we communicate? This was paraphrased for brevity and anonymity. We got some more specifics with this question, but I think this makes it something that a lot of people can connect to. So this really isn't easy for anyone right now. I'm glad you're aware and wanting to work on communication. Your frustration's real. We haven't quite figured this out collectively with any of our relationships. I want you to know you're not alone in this. You're not weird for feeling these things. We're in the soup together. You're also very clearly after a healthy relationship. You're identifying communication needs. It's really important in this moment to do that work with your person and with all your people. I really recommend when you're talking about communication and talking about needs, you use the structure, I feel, I need. So I might say something like, I feel lonely a lot. I need an early morning check-in. I'm waking up extra lonely. I feel afraid a lot that we're disconnecting. I need us to not just talk about video games. I feel like our whole relationship was based on doing things. I need us to figure out something we can do together, even though we're like virtual right now, maybe playing video games together. So identifying before you have the conversation what your feelings are and what you think your needs might be. It's really good to remember that one person isn't going to meet all your needs in the whole world. So I would say, I think our partnerships, we lean really hard on, and sometimes in crisis situations that can feel like a lot to both people who are in a committed partnership. So thinking a lot about quality, not quantity, and avoiding excessive communication, setting ground rules to honor your needs. Sometimes scheduling helps. So if you're a person who wants more communication and your person is a person who wants less communication, finding ways to honor that and making sure you have other healthy relationships that meet your communication needs, and strengthening your other relationships too is really critical. Making sure you have some alone time to deal with your feelings is really important too. Starting to honor time when you're with yourself as time that you can work on yourself and with yourself rather than just feeling anxious about being alone is really, really helpful. And then also sharing things like photos, videos, video calling when possible so you feel a little more connected, and maybe even doing things together, like watching a film together or playing a game together online like I mentioned, or doing similar things like both checking out the same book from the library and reading it and talking about it, or listening to the same music, or reading the same news. I love Teen Vogue for all the news. But finding things that you are doing together, like you're both doing, like you maybe used to both do things together, and then having those things that you can connect over and have conversations over can sometimes deepen the conversations that you're having right now. A lot of these things that I'm citing are leaning hard on our healthy communication wheel. We have a wheel that shows the ways relationships sort of fall apart when people have power over other people, and the way relationships hold together strong when people have power with other people or they have equality. So the first page of this is when we start to feel relationships feel really toxic and power imbalanced. When people's needs feel really different and we start to pressure each other or show jealousy or move towards isolation or intimidate each other because we want certain things to change. And the second part of this wheel, the equality wheel, advocates the thing you're after, good communication, but some of the other things that you can really think about as part of your communication patterns right now: honesty, accountability to holding your commitment to engage in certain ways, making sure that you aren't just identifying your needs and trying to get your needs met, but hearing what your partner's needs are in this time too is a really important way to make sure that your communication stays solid and you keep practicing communication that builds your relationship so y'all can strengthen it while things are super weird.
And just to add one more thing on that, one thing you can do as well when you're feeling this way is to really communicate with your partner and establish a communication plan, a lot like a safety plan, that just outlines everything very specifically and says what everyone needs. It's not a super fun thing to do, and it can be really hard. But with everything that we're all trying to go through, especially with long distance online relationships, that can be really helpful to just know, like, when I'm feeling this at this time of day, I'm going to need this from you, or we need to play video games together or watch Netflix together. It can be a really hard thing to do, but it can be incredibly helpful. So I would definitely encourage you to make that plan.
So these are some of our great resources. This will all be linked from the Teen Library page as well. So you can access these here, but I think we're just going to talk through a couple of these resources briefly. So this is our COVID-19 Youth Resource Guide. We've changed a lot of things around in it. So if you got one of these in high school or middle school this year, it's changed now that we're in COVID. There are a couple of resources on the first page that are support groups. If you're interested in helping a friend out, or if you're in a spot where you want to deal with some of the trauma that you have had in your past, we've got some support options for teens for that. And you can get in touch with me, Lindsay, at midawayhouse.org about that, or can reach out directly for our teen survivors of sexual violence support group. You can reach out directly to our partner at Bloomington Center for Connection, who's a trained therapist. So we want you to make sure that you have some Zoom support if you don't have it right now. We're running these programs, the Ask Anything programs. You can keep showing up and seeing us. And PRISM isn't affiliated with us, but this guide has a bunch of things in town, and we definitely partner with PRISM and are really excited that PRISM has virtual meetings that you can connect through, and the information about when those are is available on Facebook. It's kind of ever changing, but that's a crew of folks who support LGBTQIA identifying folks, young folks. And so if that's you and you want to connect in there, we recommend it. There are a couple pages of hotlines and online resources. Middle Way House is the first one, confidential line, it's 24/7. Love is Respect is also a confidential 24/7 line. It's national, and it is really teen specific. So if you have questions that don't feel local, but you want to talk to someone who really is trained to work with teens, you can call or text that line. And then the Indiana Teen Link Tree is put together by the library, and I think we're going to see that resource or see the Teen Library page that links to that resource as well.
So you'll be able to find this page if you just go to mcpl.info/teen/COVID-19 resources. You'll be able to get there pretty easily if you just go to our main page. But this has a bunch of different stuff. We do have that COVID-19 Youth Resource Guide from Middle Way House linked directly there. So if you wanted a copy of your own, that'd be an easy way to find it. The library has general COVID-19 resources. We focus pretty specifically on the Bloomington-Monroe County area. So if you're looking for local things, that's a really good place to look. We also have both the MCC-SC and the RBB-SC breakfast and lunch schedule set up. So if you need free lunches through the summer, there are ways to do that through the school system. We also have linked to the Be Well Indiana page, which is put together by the Indiana Division of Mental Health and Addiction, which is really, there are a lot of really fantastic resources on there if you're struggling with your mental health through COVID-19. And in that same vein, we also link to a page called Seize the Awkward. And Seize the Awkward is really focused on helping people talk about their mental health and all the awkward conversations that can happen around there, because it's important to talk to each other about how we're feeling. One of the most important parts of feeling better is talking to people and getting support, and Seize the Awkward really helps to facilitate those kind of conversations.
That My Plan app that I cited today, the information is there, and the information for Scarlet Teen are both in this guide. So if you forget those like specific things, you will have those linked in the resource guide for you. And then do we want to jump back to that resource guide for a second? There are a bunch of other phone numbers. It marks on them if they're confidential lines and what hours they're available to you. Some of them are text lines, some of them are call lines, some of them are both. But if you're dealing with some different stuff, we want you to have as many resources that might be useful to you that you can actually access from your home. So we wanted to have hotlines and text lines set up for you. There's another mental health resource here, the Icarus Project. It now actually diverts, they renamed themselves to the Fireweed Collective, but the website will still link you there. But it's a spot that's been really supportive for a lot of folks who've struggled with mental health crises. And they have a really fantastic page that includes crisis safety plans, supporting friends, and crisis hot and warm lines as well. Lots of self-care information. There's an online peer support space too, that's run through Facebook, where people who are experiencing crisis connect with one another. Obviously, I recommend you use the safety guidelines for tech connections that we mentioned before for that resource. Safe places. YSB is the safe place locally if you are a teen between the ages of 8 and 17 who is fleeing violence and are not or don't have a safe place to be, and you don't have an adult in your home who's going with you, who's a legal guardian. If you are fleeing violence with a parent, we have family rooms at Middleway House in the shelter, and you can stay with your siblings and the parent that is leaving if that's your situation at Middleway House. And then Stepping Stones is a resource for young people starting at 16 up to ages of 20 who are experiencing homelessness or don't have a safe spot to be. And they currently have openings. If you're a young person between those ages who is thinking about having a safe spot, a safe apartment for a couple of years as you get on your feet as a young person in the world, that is currently, they do have openings on that. And their phone number and information about applying online is in this guide as well. There's some info about supporting each other in the time of COVID that I think is really useful to read through, thinking about how you help your friends out. And if you get on to the next page, there's also a little like infographic about things that you can say to a friend who's experienced harm. It's really hard to be a person who talks about the harm you've experienced, and often people get kind of horrible responses back when they talk about things that have hurt them, like questions about if they're sure, or questions about if they could have prevented being hurt. And I think some of the things we always want to make sure when our friends are struggling, things to say are things like, I believe you, and it's not your fault, and I'm here for you. Inviting people to make safety plans with you and being a friend alongside that. You don't have to know all the answers, but having this resource for your friends can also be a really big deal in a time like this. And then making sure your friend gets to make decisions. It's really important when someone who's experienced harm or is in a crisis isn't told, you have to do this, you have to go to the police, you have to go to the hospital, you have to run away, you have to break up with him. People hear that a lot when they're in a moment of crisis, and often in moments of crisis, they've already had power taken away from them. And so it's a really important time to empower our friends and our loved ones to get to make choices for themselves and make sure we're asking, what do you want to do from here? Instead of telling people what to do, even if we think we have great ideas.
I would like to also say that if you follow our Instagram at mcpl Indiana Teen, our link tree is always available there. And that's a really cool one because it's really dynamic. We're always adding new stuff to it. So that has really up-to-date information about resources that are available to you here in the community.
I'll say thank y'all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.